Hello guys, my name is Diego Pacheco and this will be another Java video. So today we will be talking about FF4J, feature flags for Java, which is a solution for feature flags and Spring Boot. So it's quite interesting tool to be used in CI/CD initiatives, A/B testing, toggles, and this kind of things. So let's get started with a very simple POC I have here. Let's see the code and let's see up and running, right? Okay, so I have an idea project here. Let me open my idea and we can start from there. So basically, this is very straightforward. For sure, for production we would do something more complicated, but basically we need two configuration classes. All right, so this is integrated with Spring and Spring Boot. So we're gonna take a look on FF4J config. So here we're gonna annotate this as at configuration bin for Spring, and we're gonna define a bin which is FF4J. So we're gonna create the FF4J, and then we're gonna define a feature store, a property store, and an event repository. So we are doing all in memory, but FF4J, has support for plus 20 databases. So ideally in production you want to store this outside of memory and in a database, right? So we are enabling the audit trail with AOP. This is pretty cool. And we also setting the auto create to true, right? So when we are evaluating not existing features, FF4J will create them but disable. All right, there's some options for RBAC, and also if we want to set up a cache, right? But we're not using this right now, so very straightforward. Then the next config, we need to define another configuration, will be a Spring Boot servlet initializer, right? So we need to annotate with add configuration. FF4J has Swagger integration, which is pretty cool, and we have this annotation of a conditional class on the FF4J dispatcher servlet, right? And we're gonna use the auto configure after, and then we want to run this after the previous config class is done. So we're gonna define a bin, right? In the case of a missing bin, which is FF4J dispatcher servlet. So we're just gonna create that servlet and set the FF4J config on the servlet and return them. And finally, we're gonna override this method here from the Spring Boot servlet initializer, and this will be the URL of our console. All right, so I'm gonna copy this because later on we're gonna go here on the browser and we're gonna access this console, right? So it's not running, so it will not work right now. But okay, that's it. And then we have our application, right? So I have my home controller, and here we have the classical Spring Boot annotations like REST controller, request mapping, and then you have a bunch of flags here. So there's a feature to show the web console, the other one to show the REST URI. So we're using FF4J in FF4J, right? So kind of inception. And then there's a property for the username. So we auto-wire the FF4J, right? And basically there's this post constructor, right? So when this bin has all the initializations done, this method should run, right? And then what we're doing here is a bunch of ifs, right? So basically, if the feature show enable console exists, right? So we want to create this feature and we're gonna set it to true. If the feature show REST API exists, we want to create the feature and set it to true. If the show username exists, it's to true. And also, if we don't see this property, we want to create this property, right? And the user gonna be Cedric. And then we're gonna log it. And finally, we have a get operation where we basically do ifs, all right? So if this toggle is present, we render a specific HTML component. Otherwise, we don't. So this is just for sampling, all right? We shouldn't be doing HTML inside of a REST endpoints like I'm doing here, right? So you basically want to do this on the UI, or you want to delegate to a proper handler UI component or not, right? Based on a header that's there or not, or based on a sort of a experiment ID, right? But this is just for a demo, right? And we see these ifs like here again. So if the username is there, we're gonna show the username information. Otherwise, we don't, right? And then finally, we have our Spring Boot application, like traditional application, no big deal here. And let's take a look on dependencies, right? So for dependencies, this is also very straightforward. As you see, we are using one of the latest Spring Boot 2.4.1. And what we need here is a starter web from Spring Boot, right? And then we need pretty much two dependencies on FF4J. We need the boot starter and the F4J web, right? Because of the dispatcher servlet, and that's it. So now let's run this application and let's see this in action, right? So now we're gonna see some that FF4J Spring Boot is running, all right? And then we can take a look on the application. So if you go here to the web console, we see the FF4J web console, and here we have the toggles, the properties, and monitoring, all right? So if we go in features, we can see the features that we have enabled on. They're all enabled, right? And then we also have some groups here that we can see. We can create some groups. We can enable or disable specific toggles. We can edit them. We can delete them. You know, we can create new ones here. But if we create new one here, you won't have the effect because my code is not looking for that specific toggle. So, you know, I will not do that. We have properties, right? So we define that a username property on the code, and you see that appear here, and we can see the value. So that's quite interesting. And we have some monitoring, so we can do some auditing, you know, check, you know, which feature is being used. There's some charts here and everything, right? So now let me go back here. I'm trying to remember what's the endpoint. Yes. So here we are accessing my REST controller, right? And you can see here that we are printing things, right? Because of the toggle. So there's a toggle on the username. So if we go here, we go to the feature toggles, and we see, okay, show username. Let's turn it off, all right? And then if I refresh here, we don't see it any longer, right? So if I turn it on again and just go here, we see it, right? So that's a very interesting capability for the business to do testing in production, right? So pretty cool. So now let's turn everything off, right? And we're gonna see that we're gonna handle even less stuff, right? So this whole section here is gone, right? And we can easily switch it on again, and then we see it back, all right? So that's FF4J in action. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have monitoring here. Yeah, I do. So we see here, you know, we can see some counts, right? Some hits for distributions with the toggles on and off. We can see some partitioning per user, host, or source, right? Since I'm doing everything on my machine, it's all like the same, all right? But as you get these in more machines, you would see differently. Even if you go like in time series, we can see some time series metrics, you know, and if you go auditing, we can see like the logs of being enabled and disabled. You can click here to see in a JSON event, right? So this is like pretty cool, pretty useful, and we can use this tool as basis for A/B testing, for feature toggles, as a way to reduce the blast radius in isolation when you want to do a technical migration, or when the business want to introduce a drastic new feature. We can use as basis for canary, for dark canary, and so many things on CI/CD. So that's FF4J. I hope you guys like it. See you next time. Take care. Cheers.